one thing that Dr. Soni didn't say, and I guess I'm thankful that he didn't say, is when my house burned down, it was 3 a.m, and we were all asleep. And so we essentially all came out in our pajamas. So there it is, it's mid-October, and there are 70-foot flames.
Boston.
In Boston. It was awful. And it galvanized our friends, right? Like, not only, he told the story about Pico Iyer and the ways in which those people were either freed or bound to the place, but my experience before any other was that those people with whom I shared that experience were so much closer after that, right? And it
your friendship was literally forged in fire.
Absolutely, right? Yeah, amalgamated. We all sort of burned together, and that became the place, I think, of belief for us, right? Was in the friendship and in the community. And so I wondered if you could speak here to this kind of multiple. We were a Jew, some non-believers, some people whose, as far as I could tell, their religion was the Grateful Dead, and some others.
Still folks like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you are a religious leader at a place that has more faiths than any other, perhaps, higher education institution. So how are you seeing faith changing?
What I see with my students is that they want religion to work for them. They don't want to work for religion. So they're more likely, when I was growing up, it was like, here's your religion and here's who you are. Can you shape your life to fit into this box that religion says you should be? With my students, I find they're like, okay, if this is religion and this is me, how do I interpret this in a way to make sense of who I already am? And so there's a lot of creative interpretation that's happening. And by the way, that's the story of religion. It's always been interpretation. There's no literal way to read a text. Every person who reads a text is creatively interpreting the text. There is no one Christianity, one Islam, one Buddhism. There's 30,000 denominations of Christianity. If there was one interpretation, there wouldn't be all those denominations. So I think students are feeling proactive to creatively interpret their text in a way that makes sense for them. And what I have found is the way you interpret your religious text tells me more about who you are than it tells me about the text itself. If you interpret the text as a peace text, it tells me that those are your values. If you interpret the text as a text of violence or exclusion, then that's probably what you believe even before you got to that text. So we see ourselves in our texts. The reading and interpreting of a text is a mirror to our own values. And I feel like students are empowered in a way to do that, where they feel as though I'm going to make this work for me and my own worldview. And the other thing they want to do is translate their values into action. They don't want to just talk about their faith, they want to live it. They want to pray with their feet. So my students are more likely to go do service or go do something that translates that, not just theoretically, but into the world, from abstraction to application. And they want their faith to be a solution to the great problems of the world. They don't want their faith to be part of the problem. And so those are really inspiring stories. But I also know that 45% of my students are not affiliated with religion, compared to 20% of Americans, compared to 2% of Americans in 1950. So the big story here in your generation is the loss of affiliation. 2/3 of my students, and maybe even 2/3 of you, would say that you're more spiritual than religious. You might walk away from formal religion, but you don't walk away from meaning or purpose or even God. You just walk away from the institutions of religion. So I think that can create other kinds of opportunities for students to think about their faith in different ways. Our students are very creative with how they define themselves. Some students say, I'm a Zen Christian. My mother is Buddhist. My father is Christian. Or I'm a Hindu. My mother is Hindu and my father is Jewish. Or I heard one the other day, I've heard it before. I'm sushi. I'm like, sushi? What? It's like, my mother is Sunni and my father is Shia. I'm like, all right, that works. I'm trans-spiritual. I don't know what trans-spiritual means, but I want to be trans-spiritual. We have a student who's a member of the Church of the Jedi. You know, that's her faith. She walks around with Yoda, and she espoused Jedi wisdom, and it's kind of beautiful. So I think students are more creative with these hybridized identities, with these different creative identities. And I want all of you to think about that too. If you are, what I have found is that for many people, theology is not the, this might be a little controversial. This is my opinion. So for the chaplain to say this,
There will be Q&A, don't worry.
What I have seen with young people is that theology is often the price of admission, not the prize of admission. Many young people don't actually agree with the theology of their tradition, but why do they stay? Because of the identity, the community, the service, the ethics, the values, the songs, the emotional resonance. It can be hard to walk away from all those things. So even if you're struggling with your faith in terms of theology or the mythology, the cultural mythology that, you know, behind our faiths, that doesn't mean you should walk away from those things that mean something to you. And there are ways to interpret your tradition in a different way and still retain those things that mean something to you.